Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Three High Safeties. This is the Fantasy Football edition. I am Kevin Cole. I'm joined, as always, on Wednesdays by Ian Hartitz and Andrew Erickson. First to you, Ian. We got to go start sit. Who are you fading? Who are you buying this week? Give the people all of the knowledge inside of that noggin.
We are going back to the well with Jerry Jeudy, everybody. You know, it was a slow start to the season for Jeudy in terms of production, but we've really seen him emerge as one of the league's best route runners already as a rookie, even though the production hasn't really been there all year, but it has been there over the past 2 weeks. 24 combined targets over these past two games, and finally did kind of have his coming out party against the Falcons last week. So I'm fine going back to the well with Jeudy against the Raiders secondary that, come on, I don't think they can guard someone of his caliber. And what really makes Jeudy so great is, as we've seen over these past few weeks, even when things go south for this bad Broncos team and this overall bad Broncos offense, Drew Lock is at least good enough to lead them back in the fourth quarter and keep the production coming even in garbage time. So start Jerry Jeudy. I will be sitting I will be sitting every Colts RB at this point. There's just not enough here. We can live with two RB backfields. There's only a certain amount of workhorses around the league, but Jonathan Taylor, him fumbling and not being as involved, and then Frank Reich coming out and saying that he still has confidence in him. Like, don't confuse Jonathan Taylor not meeting his expectations as a reason to play Jordan Wilkins or Naeem Hines. It is just a complete mess. We have similar touch projections for all these guys. It's so unfortunate because we have this big, beastly Colts offensive line. Truly, at this moment in time, though, we can't do much of anything with it with the running backs. So it sucks, but sit Taylor, Wilkins, Hines, all those guys.
So for my starts and sits, I'm going to go with Jared Goff. Again, fantasy football doesn't have to be hard. Got the Seattle Seahawks. Over the past 4 weeks, most fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position, and that's 18% higher than the next closest team. So again, the Rams are a run-first team, but Seattle has basically been that pass-funnel defense. Teams really haven't been able to run beyond the Seahawks because the Seahawks are set out to stop the run. And we saw last week, they came in with the game plan. We're going to stop the Bills' running attack, and that didn't work because the Bills were like, that's okay. Then we'll just throw the ball all over the yard. So I think this is a spike week for Goff. We've seen him so far this year. He's had 3 games with 29-plus fantasy points. He's also had 5 games with under 20 fantasy points. So I think he's going to fall on the upper tier of his outcomes. So I think that Jared Goff is a really good play at the quarterback position. And then as a sit, I'm going to go with that Buffalo Bills running back is Devin Singletary. So Zach Moss outtouched him last week 11-5, and it's really hard to trust Singletary in these games where the Bills just aren't looking to run the football. This should be a high-scoring affair against the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals' run defense is middle of the pack, but it's not, hey, this is such a bad defense, you need to start all your running backs against them. It doesn't profile as that. He needs to hit a big run to really pay off by start because he's not getting goal line usage. Josh Allen does not check the ball down, so he's not going to be used as a pass catcher. So I just don't see, in the range of outcomes where Singletary can be an effective RB start. I mean, he had 2 carries last week, so I'm out on Devin Singletary.
Yeah, for me, the start this week, this is really a PPR start, and that's going to be J.D. McKissic. And the play is really on Alex Smith more than anything else. I mean, we saw when Alex Smith came in last week, McKissic not only got a third of the running back carries, but he got 35% target share. Alex Smith loves those dump offs. The game script this week, we'll see what it ends up being, but they are playing at the Lions. The Lions have a decent enough defense where I think they can put enough pressure on the Redskins offense that we'll continue to see them playing either in a neutral game script or playing from behind where you can continue to pile up those PPR points for McKissic going forward. So he's going to be a cheap guy that you can put into a lineup, especially if you have some bye week issues at the running back position this week. And then as a sit is going to be Irv Smith Jr. At tight end. Now, there may not be a lot of people buying it, but he did have 2 touchdowns last week. The thing is, not only did he only have 2 targets, but he only ran 9 routes. So again, the Vikings are just going into really just turtle mode once they have a lead, and they're just going to run out the clock. They're not going to pass the ball. They only had 22 pass attempts last week. So I think this week at tight end, if you need someone to fill in there, you have a couple of options. Number one, you can grab Austin Hooper off of waivers if he's been dropped coming off of the bye week there. They have some good matchups going forward. The Texans defense should be fruitful. And then you could also look at Jordan Reed. He's had 10 days to heal up between games. And with George Kittle out of the lineup before, Reed was running anywhere from 15 to 20 routes, and he was the main pass catching option there for the tight end position before when Kittle had missed time. So I think he probably also gives you more upside than someone like Irv Smith. And so I would take a risk on him rather than going back to the touchdown guy from last week.
All right, dudes, those are guys who are looking to start or sit, but who's someone out there that maybe is not on the squad that you want to have with the fantasy playoffs here on the horizon? Andrew, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think it's just, for me, it's just as many Buccaneers players that you can try to acquire. Rob Gronkowski has a really good schedule for the tight end position, for the rest of the season, not even just looking at the playoffs. And, if he catches that ball in the end zone, no one's complaining about Rob Gronkowski's, under 1 fantasy point performance from Sunday night. And again, that game is such an outlier. Brady was pressured at the highest rate that he's seen all season. That's not going to happen because he's had really good protection throughout the first 8 weeks of the year. So I expect the pressure is not going to be there like it was in that matchup. So again, people are going to be low on Brady, on the pass catchers, because I can't figure out, is it Brown, is it Godwin, is it Evans? But honestly, it doesn't matter, because when they're playing teams like the Minnesota Vikings, the Atlanta Falcons, and the Detroit Lions, weeks 14 through 16, you're going to want to throw all your Buccaneers out in your lineup, because chances are one of them is going to hit and you're going to want them in your lineup.
Yeah, I think for me, number one, you could say Tom Brady, and a lot of the same logic there, especially his fantasy playoff schedule, playing against the Vikings and then the Falcons and then the Lions. That's a pretty good schedule in weeks 14, 15, and 16. But if you can't get him, if someone's really relying on him to start, and you're a quarterback streaming guy like I am, I think Baker Mayfield is an interesting option. He doesn't have a ton of upside, but if you look at the schedule going forward, he probably has the friendliest schedule of any quarterback for the rest of the season. He has the Texans this week. He has the Jaguars a couple of weeks after that. And then in weeks 15 and 16, he has the Jets and the Giants. So he's someone you want to just have available if you're not 100% certain in your quarterback that you're starting now. And you never know what can happen. If you have an injury to who you currently have slotted in there as a starter, Baker's another guy who can fill in for you and give you a decent floor in those matchups.
Yeah, a guy I'm looking to get is, a lot of similar reason to you, Kevin, because he's on the same team, Kareem Hunt. This second half schedule for the Browns is, just pointing in all the right directions. And with Hunt, I was so ready to fade this entire backfield with him coming back. Because look, in fantasy football, we want to chase volume, not talent. And even as talented as Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are, I was skeptical of their ability to kind of replicate that production they had in the early part of the season, because how are they possibly going to get that good a positive game script again? Well, yeah, when you're playing the Giants, Jets, Jaguars over these next few weeks, yeah, we can't expect them to get that positive game script. So it was fairly even. Chubb led the way in carries, 51 versus 49 during those first 3 weeks of the year. But we know Hunt's going to be the receiving back. And, with this big badass offensive line they got in Cleveland now, I think they can, be one of the few offenses to consistently enable 2 top 15 backs at position. So, you go to the rankings at RB these days, and you kind of get down with the 6 or 7 guys. And after that, it's kind of like what's going on here anyway. So I think having someone like Hunt, Chubb, where even if they're getting 15 to 20 touches instead of the 25 to 30 we might prefer elsewhere, in a good offense, and when they're getting fantasy friendly touches like Hunt in the passing game, I think we can go with that. So he disappointed a little bit with a workhorse role, didn't put out production everyone wanted. So I think if people, we got Chubb coming back and they're expecting Hunt to take more of a true backup role, might be able to scoop him up a bit cheaper than you would otherwise.
Love it. I think Derrick Henry is also a good trade target, and that is a nice segue into our Thursday night preview, talking about the DFS slate for Thursday night's game. I'm surprised to see it's not the Titans and the Jaguars. It seems like that's always the game that's played on Thursday night, but instead we have the Titans and the Indianapolis Colts going and duking it out. So when I look at the slate, I think one thing that kind of stands out to me, I think Corey Davis is an interesting guy to go back to. He still leads the team in target share, 27% over the past 3 weeks, despite the fact that he put up a total goose egg last week. Again, probably not going to see 0 catches. There's 3 targets again. It's probably going to be a little bit higher than that. So I think that he's a good guy to go back to. People don't like to play guys after they put up goose eggs, but Brandon Cooks kind of showed us, hey, that's not, we don't want to do that always, especially if they're running routes and they are still seeing targets in the offense. I think Corey Davis is an interesting guy to go back there. And I think at the tight end position on the Colts, I think that, Big Mac, maybe, Mo Alley Cox, Jack Doyle's out of this game, and Mo Alley Cox is number 1 in yards per route run among all players this season. So he can really provide that boom potential that you need for a cheap player. Again, Trey Burton's probably like the safer option at tight end, but if you're shooting to win a tournament, you want that big play upside, which Mo Alley Cox can definitely deliver.
Anytime I have the chance to tell you people to play A.J. Brown as a wide receiver 1, I'm going to take that opportunity, everybody. Look, I understand the Colts defense is at the top of a lot of these passing metrics, but, I'm not sure there's a more fraudulent, kind of pass defense in the league. Look, Buckner, Leonard, those guys are fantastic, but you really want to tell me that Mike Zimmer, just couldn't get anything out of Xavier Rhodes, and all of a sudden he goes to Indy and becomes a top 5 cornerback? I am not buying that. We saw it 2 weeks ago against the Lions with Matthew Stafford going for well over 303 touchdowns, and they come back and they play Lamar Jackson, the Ravens, who are happy to run the ball to their heart's desires. But I believe Lamar went for like 19 for 23 in that game. We saw Gardner Minshew go 19 for 20 against these guys in week 1. I mean, they just aren't this defense that I think we need to fear in fantasy land. You know, with A.J. Brown being expensive, you know, people might try to take a discount, go to Corey Davis and this and that. We got to start treating A.J. Brown as a top 5 receiver that he has legitimately been in the NFL ever since he has come out there. I mean, Andrew, you're bringing up yards per route run. If we just want to go minimum 100 targets over these past 2 years, the only guys averaging more yards per route run than A.J. Brown, George Kittle, Michael Thomas, and Devontae Adams. He is that good. And honestly, earlier in the year, it was like he was playing through the knee bruise, and we didn't see that same kind of yak explosiveness ability that he really, you know, just got the majority of his production on as a rookie. Man, against the Bears last week, I know he had that nice, perfectly thrown touchdown from Tannehill over the shoulder, but some of those moves he was making after the catch up before and after that was what really stood out to me. So he looks healthier than ever. I'm not afraid of this Colts defense. Captain A.J. Brown season, everybody. Let's get it.
I like both of those. I'm going to turn to what's difficult to parse, and that is the wide receivers for the Colts. I know that T.Y. Hilton is probably going to be back, but a name that sticks out to me is Michael Pittman Jr. If you look at what he did earlier this season, he started off running about 50% of the routes. He quickly went up into 80, 90%. He was one of the leading options, clocking in around 20% target share a couple of weeks before getting injured. He's back in that high 80s, 90 route run area the last couple of weeks. And if you look at the pricing, at least from a showdown perspective, he's 4th in salary when it comes to all those guys. You know, Zach Pascal, T.Y. Hilton's above him, even Marcus Johnson's above him. So he's getting the cheapest guy, and he really could have the most upside, and really probably profiles better than any of those guys as being a reliable target hog if he can fill into that role. And he's a rookie, so you hope those guys are going to perform better in the second half of the season. So he would be the guy that I would like to, you know, maybe even sprinkle into some lineups as a captain spot, but definitely have in the flex position.
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.